This episode is brought to you by Google Gemini. With the Gemini app, you can talk live and have a real-time conversation with an AI assistant. It's great for all kinds of things, like if you want to practice for an upcoming interview, ask for advice on things to do in a new city, or brainstorm creative ideas. And by the way, this script was actually read by Gemini. Download the Gemini app for iOS and Android today. Must be 18 plus to use Gemini Live.
This episode is brought to you by Disney's Mufasa, The Lion King. Get tickets now for the ultimate family holiday movie experience. Reunite with the characters you know and the untold story you'd never expect. Witness Mufasa's rise from orphan to king and see how the legendary villain Scar got his name. Disney's Mufasa, The Lion King, in theaters everywhere this Friday. The kingdom awaits.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
There are three words, when put together, combined to form the scariest phrase in the world of modern-day movies. No, it's not time travel film. And no, it isn't retro slasher flick. In fact, the scariest thing anyone could ever whisper into the ear of a cinephile is straight to streaming. That said, we're here to whisper to you that Time Cut is not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies and a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. And hello to all of our listeners in Washington, New Jersey, and around the world. Hi guys, how you doing? Okay, so it was time to dive into the list, the catalog, if you will, of straight to streaming Netflix films, because there are some good ones. There's some not good ones, but there's some good ones. I think we might have an interesting discussion on our hands with this one, because we're talking about 2024's Time Cut. And here to see if he's got the time to cut a few riffs on this one is Alex Leal, back on the show. Alex, how you doing, man?
I'm good, and I'm glad you finally got me back on the show. And trust me, this movie is not as bad as Norbit.
Yeah, it would be real freaking hard to be as bad as Norbit. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still angry at you for that one. But I'll let it slide. Because you're the one who brought Time Cut to the table on this one. So what is it about this film? And this is a recent release. So what is it about this film that made you sit there and go, I know exactly who I have to call for this one?
I even went up to you the next day I watched this movie, and I was like, we need to talk about this, especially because of the twist. And I think also because of the writing in this movie, because the writing is there's so many holes. There's so many plot holes in this movie.
Yeah, it's funny. When someone walks up to you and goes, we need to talk, normally it's not a good thing. Luckily, when someone comes up to me and goes, we need to talk, it's because they saw a movie that qualifies. So we're good. Now, I need to put this preface out there real early, because this film was only released October 30th of this year, 2024. So with that being said, at the time that we are recording this, we are just over a month into the release of this film. So I warn you right now, dear listeners, spoilers could be afoot in this episode. I'm going to try not to spoil too much, but if you do not want this film spoiled, go watch the film now, or put the show on pause, put it in your download queue. I'm cool. Come back to me later. It's all good. And then go watch the film when you have a moment to, because I'm going to tell you this right now. I didn't hate this film. I don't think it deserved to be as bad as it was ripped on. So, dear listeners, go watch the film, because I don't want to spoil it, because this has actually got some decent little, that's the thing about mysteries and whodunits kind of thing. More often than not, it's pretty damn formulaic. I got caught off guard. I thought I knew who did it. I was caught off guard. So, if you're interested, if I've piqued your interest at all, watch the film first and then come back and finish the episode. So, you got a moment, take a breather, grab a drink, watch a film, or if you already watched the film, welcome back, get another drink, and then sit down because we're going to talk about this film. But before we do, it is time to take time cut and trailerize it.
Sweetly, Minnesota, home to the legacy of a serial killer who went crazy for 3 days that never came back. I mean, death is sad and everything, but it's been 20 years. Move on. But one person who can't is Lucy, the sister to one of the victims, but not really because she wasn't even alive when it happened. But when this backup plan of a teenager finds herself thrown back in time to right before the killings happen, she's left with one choice. Stop the killings, or play dress up with a sister she never had. It's a totally killer mashup that's been done before and reminds you that you can't spell yawn without YA. Time Cut, rated TV 14 for time travel violations.
I admit, I rip on these movies a little bit during the trailerize, but I tease out of love because really, more often than not, I really do like these films. And say what you will about YA-esque stories, but there are some good stories that come out of the YA world of fiction. Not that this film is based on a novel at all, but I could see it being based on a novel. And if it did have a novel version that came out before this, I would have happily read this because the story, while basic, is not bad at all. But let's get into who is in this film before we deep dive into this. The movie stars Madison Bailey, Antonia Gentry, Michael Shanks, Griffin Gluck, Megan Best, Samuel Braun, Sidney Sabiston, Kateem O'Connor, Rachel Crawford, and Jordan Peddle. It was directed by Hannah McPherson. Now, I did mention the 3 scariest words in cinema, straight to streaming. This film did go straight to Netflix, so there's no box office, and there is no budget listed. But for my dear Canadian listeners, my fellow Canucks, this film was shot in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So Canucks gonna represent. I did mention that the film was released this year, October 30th, 2024. So you got a slasher flick released on Halloween. So they did that run perfectly. But the reason why we are here, not because Alex said, hey, I like Netflix and I like movies and we're going to talk again, are the critics. Over at Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a tomatometer of 26%. The audience score, the popcorn meter, sits at 33%. But let's take a look at the bigger picture. At IMDb, it has a 5-star rating for a 50%. At Metacritic, the film sits at a 36 Metascore. At Letterboxd, it only has 2 stars out of 5, giving this a 40% rating. And at the Movie Database, they're a little bit more generous, sitting at 56, giving this film the aggravated aggregate of 40.16%. So, Alex, I throw this to you first. Taking a look at the Rotten Tomatoes tomatometer of 26%, which is the harshest of the scores, but then taking a look at the Movie Database where it sits at 56%, where do you put this film?
It's a tough one because I will say it's one of the better Netflix movies that I've watched in recently. And there's so many things about this movie, but I will say maybe around a 47 or a 48. If I get this right a second time, I am going to lose it.
Okay, but here's the thing. There are going to be comparisons to the film Totally Killer, which was released previous to this film and has a very similar plot to it. And if you take a look at the movie poster for Totally Killer, the mask is also eerily similar to the mask used by the serial killer in Time Cut. But to put this into perspective, Totally Killer over at Rotten Tomatoes has a tomatometer of 87%. with the popcorn meter sitting at 77%. So it's one of those things where you sit there and go, okay, I understand that Totally Killer came first. And I totally understand that. Yeah, see what I did there? I understand that you have a bigger budget, you have a bigger name cast, and this is not to disparage the cast of Time Cut, but let's be honest, Totally Killer, you have Kiernan Shipka, Olivia Holt, Randall Park, you have big names in here. Recognize good names. Kiernan Shipka is a fantastic actor, but there's good actors in Time Cut too. But because it's straight to streaming and because it's got, at least you have to figure, a lower budget than Totally Killer, it's going to feel, and I hate to say this term, it's going to feel like a mockbuster. So Alex, watching this, first of all, did you see Totally Killer before seeing this?
I did not. I didn't even know Totally Killer was like that.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. I went in this having not watched Totally Killer at all either. So I got to enjoy this without having that preconceived notion of what came before. And I get there's going to be a difference because, of course, Totally Killer, they go back to the 80s, where here they only go back as far as 2003. But the other thing, too, is that you can point out that by going back to, so far to 1987, it becomes, I don't want to say hokey, but it becomes one of those things where it's almost I don't want to say textbook for what they're doing in the 80s. 2003, we're now getting to that point, by the way, we're now getting to that point where people can go back in time to 2003 and it feels like a long time ago. Oh, dear God. Oh, dear God. But still, it's one of those things where it's a different era that they're going back to. Different vibe, different kind of references and whatnot. So even though the basic plot is still the same, it's going to be one of those things where it's still going to feel different because it's in a different era. So keep in mind that both Alex and I are coming into this film, Time Cut, not having watched Totally Killer, so not having been handcuffed by those references.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
So let's get into this film. Madison Bailey, who stars as Lucy Field. This is the main girl who goes back in time and tries to stop the serial killer from killing her, what would have been her sister. Alex, your thoughts on Madison Bailey?
So I came into this movie wanting to watch Madison Bailey, especially after... So I'm going to be referencing a couple of Netflix shows because she's in a Netflix show that I really like called Outer Banks.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently really enjoyed that show, and she just shows that level of vulnerability in that show that is so it's so good to watch. I didn't like her so much in the new season. I feel like she was just there to be there, but she was still good. But now I'm coming into this movie and I saw her and I was like, okay, I really like her. So I wanted to go in and watch her. She's actually I rewatched it a second time yesterday just so that I can see if I had different opinions. And she's actually not bad in the movie itself. I think it's just there's something about the writing that makes this movie have so many plot holes that the decision in the end for her is just so weird.
I can understand. And again, spoilers like a mofo, dear listeners. So if you haven't paused the show, this is your final warning because I'm going to start to drop some of these spoilers here. Okay. All right. You've been warned. I did warn you. When you realize the paradox that happens, right, where Lucy is kind of like the parents' backup plan. So for the record, dear listeners, in this film in 2003, 4 kids were murdered by the Sweetly slasher. One of them was Summerfield. So then we get to 20, 21 years later, depending on, when they were filming this. And because they do make that reference of 20, it's basically 20 years. Just say it's 20 years. But it's one of those things where here you have a 17-year-old who clearly was I don't want to say the backup plan, but clearly one of those things where the parents decided to have another kid after dealing with the trauma of losing Summer to the serial killer. And really, if she goes back in time and saves Summer, there is the possibility that her parents would not have had her. So it's a very interesting paradox that she's put into. She can save her sister, or what would have been her sister, at the risk of not existing. And that's one of those things where I watch Doctor Who a lot. I freaking love Doctor Who. So time travel to me, I'm all down with the wibbly wobbly timey wimey. That's fine. I like Lucy in this because you realize that she has basically gone past or been able to live without kind of feeling the trauma that everyone else feels in her household. Her mother, her father, they're both still dealing with this. And it's one of those things where probably when they see Lucy, they think Summer. So even though they were probably good intentionedly trying to have another child, they realize that by having another child, they are continuing and prolonging the trauma of losing Summer. So Lucy's in this no-win situation here where it's like her very existence continues to drag her parents down. That's got to be tough. And I think Madison Bailey actually portrayed that very well in this.
She did, absolutely. And I just think her decision to also stay in 2003, it's like you can also think of a plot hole like, wait, so what happened for the parents and what happened to her in 2024?
Well, see, there's the thing, and they actually explain that at the end of the film, where after she does what she does and stops the serial killer, when you go back to 2024, she realizes that if Summer never died, Lucy never was born. So by saving Summer, she goes back to a future where she never existed. Summer's still alive, but Lucy never existed. So the fact that she was able to go back to 2003 and have a life and have a family, that makes sense. It makes total sense why she went back. I completely understand that.
Hey, I will say otherwise. I am going to say one thing, and this is me coming from a 2004 kid. How they portray 2003, especially with like the CDs and everything like that, did not seem like 2003 for me.
See, that's the thing. I remember 2003 very, very well. Burn CDs, definitely a thing. Ugg boots, definitely a thing. Yeah, everyone loved their freaking BlackBerry. I get it. Like, that's the thing. You go back to 87 in Totally Killer. And again, I have not seen Totally Killer, so just bear with me here. You go back to 1987 and you are dealing with very dated references that maybe only the older movie audience or movie-going audience is going to get. Younger people going to see Totally Killer, they're going because A, it's a slasher flick, B, it's kind of fun, and C, it's Kiernan Shipka, and she's pretty awesome. But here, 2003 is not that long ago, right? So anyone who's like at least like 25 years old or something like that, or maybe 30, will have those kind of references. It doesn't feel that far out of place. And maybe that's why I kind of, yes, I still remember 1987 too, vaguely, but still, I remember 1987 and, it was okay. It's the 80s, but the 80s has been done. I remember 2003 vividly. And I think they actually nailed quite a bit of it. And the music was pretty good around then. So the soundtrack was actually pretty good too. So I didn't mind that at all. But I think with Madison Bailey as Lucy Field, you get a solid performance. And the funny thing is, this is like the second film with Madison Bailey in it that was released in 2024 that qualifies for this podcast. The other is The Painter. And I can't say anything because The Painter is going to be featured on our Movies of 2024 grading on a curve. And you know how those films go and those episodes go. So just brace yourself. I cannot talk about The Painter, but I can talk about Time Cut. Madison Bailey did a very, very good job here. I like the fact that Lucy, and it makes sense too, that by getting the NASA internship, she was going to get to leave town. She was going to get to leave Sweetly and leave that trauma. But then you go back to 2024, the internship is gone because she never existed. There is no future. She has no records. She does not exist in that future world. But she can in 2003.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because she has something to look forward to in 2003, then in 2024, where it's like her parents didn't even want her to leave because her parents didn't want anything bad to happen to her at all. You could see how closed off they were from getting her to leave the area, to leave her town.
Yeah. Her parents, there's a lot of trauma in there. And let's talk about the parents now, since we're there already. Rachel Crawford, who played Kendra Field. I mean, this woman needs a slow clap because we got a very traumatized mother performance in this. But then you go back to 2003 and she never had to deal with that trauma. Some are still alive. So you're getting two very different performances out of Rachel Crawford, where I'm like, damn, she served. And she served well, but your thoughts on the mother?
Yeah, I actually really liked her. It was nice to see two different perspectives, from one in 2024 where she was very closed off and dealing with the trauma of losing probably someone that is so close and dear to her heart. And you could even see it in the scene before Lucy goes back to 2003, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just see that she was just so heartbroken. And then when you switch over to 2024 and you actually see how Lucy interacts with her mom and her dad,
mm-hmm.
it's you can understand where she's coming from and how close and personal Summer was to Rachel and to her father.
That's the thing. Going back and seeing your parents before they had that loss in them, no wonder Lucy wanted to go back to that, because then all of a sudden here's a woman who she does love. It's not that Lucy doesn't love her family at all, but it's one of those things where she has the ability to go back and stay in a time when her family was happy and they accepted her, even though they didn't really know the truth about who she was. Makes total sense. But yeah, Rachel Crawford, it was a really heartbreaking 1,000-yard stare that she had just sitting at the table at frickin' Olive Garden, which, by the way, did Olive Garden sponsor this film? Because frickin' Olive Garden. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like me some Olive Garden when I'm down in the States. And it got me hungry and I want to go back to Olive Garden. But there's no Olive Garden in Canada. Damn it.
There's only Red Lobster.
Barely. Most of the Red Lobsters are gone now. Oh my God, they're showing me things I cannot have. Damn you, movie. Because I do. I like some Olive Garden. It's good food. And whenever down there, it's either Olive Garden or Cracker Barrel. The things you can't have while you're up here. But diatribing, getting hungry. Okay.
You want some breadsticks now?
Right. Michael Shanks, who played Gilfield, Lucy's dad, Summer's dad. Your thoughts on him?
I think it was the same. It was the same for him. Like you could actually see Summer and her dad bonding in 2003, and they were still very close. Him, like, you could see that vulnerability in him, especially in 2003 when it was just Lucy talking to her dad, and especially on the scene where she wakes up earlier to try to get the sonar pass. You could see how, like, he kind of knew something was up, but he was still personal, and he was underrated in this. I actually liked him.
I mean, I think I liked Rachel Crawford better as the mom, but the thing with Michael Shanks as Gilfield is that, and this happens with many mysteries where it's a whodunit. You have to sit there and figure out, well, who is the actual Sweetly slasher in this? There was a moment or two where I'm like, wait, whoa, did the dad actually do it? Like, that would be, because then all of a sudden his trauma would literally be like, before being found out, he would realize that was actually he had to kill her or be found out. Like, but no, it wasn't, and that was just me trying to figure out who the hell it was. But that's the thing, and I'm going to give this film a ton of credit, is that they put out a ton of red herrings for people to sit there and go, oh, maybe it's him. Like, you sit there and you find yourself guessing, and little by little you realize, nope, not him. Nope, not him. And it's like, oh crap, well, who the hell is it? I'm glad they didn't have one of those, like, Gil tried to pass it off with, like, your mother really needs you to stay around, Lucy. Like, didn't try to pass off the dependency. Because that's the thing. As much as Lucy brings Kendra and Gil pain through her existence, because they remind her so much of Summer, they never really guilt her about that. So as much as they are really, really down in 2024, it's never they're not redirecting that anger and that sadness. So I'll give the writing team credit on this one, in that they didn't write horrible people for the parents. They actually wrote good people as the parents who just went through some bad things. And I like that about this film.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, you could just see the hurt from the family in 2024. It was like they couldn't imagine Summer dying in a span. Summer and her friends, mind you, dying in a span of 3 days.
Yeah. 4 deaths, all friends, dead in 3 days. Of course the town's going to reel from that. Of course the parents are going to reel from that. Like, totally understand. And dear listeners, if you listen to our earlier episode on the Netflix adaptation of Death Note, here was another film that had a parent dealing with trauma, and they didn't trope him. They didn't turn him into an alcoholic. They didn't turn him into someone who is, leaning into substances and throwing all that angst towards the kid, even though Light's father was a little bit more forceful with Light than Kendra and Gil are towards Lucy. But again, it's one of those things where they didn't trope it. It wasn't cheesy. They wrote these parents smart. Like, I don't get. And this is one of those things that I'm making on my soapbox a little bit here. I do not understand the insta-hate that the words straight to streaming get. There are some fantastic films that went straight to streaming, whether it be to HBO Max, Max now, because they can't hold on to a name. Whether it's the Netflix, whether it's the Prime, whether it's the Apple, it doesn't matter. Straight to streaming is not the death knell that it once was.
Yeah, like, I completely agree. There are some movies in Netflix, and different movies too from like HBO, from Max, sorry, or Prime. Jesus, I'm gonna do it again. That are like so good to watch. There are also the flops, like there always will be, but you need to understand that movie is just you need to watch it without a critic's like mentality and just watch it to have fun and see if it's any good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you would have the same reaction like back in 2003 before streaming existed, like anything that was like direct to video, direct to DVD, direct to VHS, whatever the case may be, right? Like there was that stigma like, oh, it's not good enough to go to the box office. It's not good enough to be played in the theaters. No. We are over 160 episodes into this podcast. Trust me when I say straight to streaming or straight to DVD or straight to VHS or I don't know, straight to Laserdisc for those of you who lived in the 80s, right? Like it didn't matter. It does not matter if the film is still good. Just because it didn't see a box office or a big screen doesn't mean that the film was not good enough. This is one of those proof positive moments. Even though I do appreciate that maybe it's not a box office film, but it doesn't mean it's bad. Antonio Gentry, who played Cinephile. So this is one of the victims, the woman who would have been Lucy's sister had Lucy been born. Your thoughts on her?
I honestly thought she was so good. Like especially the bonding of Summer and Lucy together. I'm sorry, I liked it. I thought it was just like it's a normal like clothing montage and everything, but it was nice to see Lucy reconnecting with her sister, and she added that little bit of like it was definitely someone that I wasn't looking like I didn't expect to go into, but when you actually get to know her and everything in 2003, she was so good portraying Lucy.
Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts, but let me get this out of the way first. I like the fact that Summer was portrayed as someone very diametrically different than Lucy, right? Summer is very much of the moment. She's into fashion. She's into her friends. She's not the smartest person when it comes to being book smart, but it's not like she's dumb. She's just not focused on schoolwork and not very good at it. And that's okay, right? But the fact that she is so opposite from Lucy allows both of them to kind of meet in the middle. That being said, this is one of those little things, and I get that you can't really expand too much in a film that's going to only play like an hour and a half. But if someone comes up to me and says, by the way, I'm the sister that you never had because I'm a time traveler from 20 years in the future where you got killed before I was even born, and you're sitting there going like, oh, okay. I'm going to take a lot longer to process that information than Summer does here. I understand why Quinn does, because Quinn is more of the scientifically minded, doesn't rule out time travel out of hand. Quinn makes sense. Summer should be sitting there going, "Ooh, crazy girl, what are we talking about here?"
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it takes Lucy, and I get it. It takes her long to tell Summer about what's happening because she doesn't want to lose that part, like that friendship or that connection with Summer.
Yeah.
And it's like she needs to like I don't understand how she's like completely fine with it. And especially they come back after 2 and they're like, "Oh, because Lucy got that idea of, oh, if I save you, what happens to me?"
Right.
And everything like that. And she just processes that so fast.
Yeah. I mean, I get you're going to speed run something because you don't want to like lay in too much to it. You don't want to have to spend the time and force the issue kind of thing. maybe Summer is just one of those people who just believes in the fate that hand, or that the hand that fate deals them. But it's one of those things where maybe push back a little bit. I don't know.
No, I completely agree. And I think another thing, like this is kind of a nitpick, but it is kind of like what I think. The relationship of Emmy and Summer was a little half-baked for me.
I'm going to argue that one when we get to Emmy, but that's when we get to Emmy here. But we're talking nitpicking. We're talking nitpicking here. And again, this is just one of those things where because I'm me and because I watch films the way that I watch them, this is how I am. This is how broken I am. Is that when they're doing their dress Lucy up in 2003's closing montages, we can be honest, dear listeners, because we have eyes and we can watch the film and see that there is a decidedly height difference between Lucy and Summer. So I'm telling you right now, those pant legs that Lucy's wearing aren't going to fit properly and go all the way down to her ankles like a properly fitted pair of jeans would go. Wardrobe, it's okay. It's okay to give us a little bit of realism. I mean, hell, Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor, since we're talking about Doctor Who and time travel, the 13th Doctor had pant legs that didn't go all the way down to her ankle. So it's okay. Jodie Whittaker walked so Lucy Field could walk in short pants.
They even made a joke during that montage when she puts on a shirt that it's way too small for her.
Yeah. And it's quote unquote one size fits all. Like, no, it's not when you're talking about leg length. But again, this is just me. These are the thoughts that go through my head when you watch this many movies for a podcast over the span of over 3 years. I'm never going to watch a film like a normal human being, and I accept that.
Trust me, you've got me hooked on that too.
I told you I was going to ruin TV for you. Griffin Gluck, who plays Quinn. So, guy in the chair, happens to be a genius. Your thoughts on him?
Okay, so I went into this movie completely blind, and I only saw him when they came into Lucy came into 2003.
Right.
And I've watched Griffin Gluck before in a movie called Middle School, The Worst Years of My Life. You probably don't know that movie. But
I definitely do not.
I loved it as a kid. It was probably one of my favorite movies. It's probably not that great now, but I loved it. I loved him. Now I'm seeing him in a totally different movie than that. And it's I will say he was good. And there was definitely a progression from his character during the movie itself, especially from Lucy, them two bonding. It was definitely you could see a progression.
Right.
And I can understand the twist. I can completely understand the twist. I just feel it was so I didn't expect it to go that way. I actually thought it was going to be Emmy. But you could see his progression, and especially at the end when he bands together with Lucy, it's okay, he overcome that vulnerability with Summer and put that over him to try and help her.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things where, and I'm trying, dear listeners, I'm trying not to spoil this, but hear me out, okay? I understand why Quinn believes Lucy, because Quinn is the kind of character that definitely would believe Lucy because he is a scientifically minded person. I get that. But, and here's where my nitpicking comes in here. We're talking 2003 Quinn. And there's no way in hell that he is going to bust open a 2024 time travel device and understand what the hell is going on. Lucy is smarter than Quinn. This is a proven fact. But yet he keeps up somehow. Now, admittedly, they have that point where Lucy's working on the computer and she's into the system because we've established that she's smart. She got an internship with NASA. It's okay, right? We accept that Lucy is smart as hell. We also accept that Quinn can be very smart, but there's a 21-year difference between what he's learned and what she's learned. And computers, back in 2003, very different than what we're dealing with. I mean, yeah, we're still on what, like Windows 98 at this point, Windows 2000, Windows XP maybe, if we're lucky. We ain't dealing with Windows 11 here. You know, we've got, was it Unix before Linux kind of thing, if I remember correctly? So Lucy is definitely the smarter person. But I think, and I have to say this now, so you've been warned, dear listeners. The fact that they explain that the existence of diverging timelines because of things that happen by people going back into the past, because we've proven time travel exists because it's happening in this film, it does create parallel worlds and multiple timelines. So, you know, Loki and Mobius K. Mobius are not going to be very happy with what's going on here. This is not the sacred timeline, or maybe it is the sacred timeline. Who knows? But still, regardless of, I think that's the only way you can describe how this film ends. And I didn't mind that because it does follow predetermined time travel concepts.
Yeah, I agree. And you can also see that he even explains, oh, you weren't there to stop me getting thrown into the river and me giving the letter to Summer, and her saying absolutely no and being bad about it and saying rude things about it. I can understand his point. It's just, how do you hold on to that for 20 whole years and come back and kill 4 people in 3 days?
That's the other thing too, is that it's not like he's a bad looking guy, right? It's not like he's dumb. He has the ability to create technology and to basically build himself a decent life, because, you know, this can't be easy to make, this time travel device. So it's not like Quinn probably isn't hurting for money in the future either. So what the hell are you holding on to? Oh, that girl, 21 years ago spurned me and made me mad. Now I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to show them. Yeah. No. Just no. Like, really? No. Like, I'm trying, people. I'm trying.
This is your way with movies. This is your way with movies.
Right. We've mentioned her a couple times already, so let's get to Megan Best, who played Emmy Golden. So we've kind of alluded to it already. So Emmy and Summer clearly have this unrequited love for each other. Like, they were getting ready to come out to their parents, and Emmy clearly did, and Summer clearly didn't. So you have this thing where Summer is really trying to deal with the idea that, you know, she couldn't bring herself to open up to her parents and tell her who she really is. And because Emmy and Ethan have the same first letter in their name, we have a really big red herring here going on. But your thoughts on Megan Best as Emmy?
Like, we didn't get to see so much of Emmy during the whole movie because it was more focused on Summer and on Lucy. But I don't know. I just, I know it was alluding to them getting together in the end.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt so what's a word to, this is nothing to them two. I was completely fine with it. I just felt the relationship and how they got together just I don't know. You could see chemistry. You could see the chemistry between Summer and Quinn. You could see it because they shared most of the spotlight together.
Right.
with Emmy and Summer, it didn't really feel like that. It was just, oh, there would be one scene and then the scene would be gone.
See, I mean, here's the thing: when you get to that point and you realize what they actually are to each other, the grief that we see from Summer in the beginning of the film when we see her killing, it all of a sudden we're like, oh, this scene makes a ton of sense now. I think the idea of Emmy, and again, we've talked about this before. Sometimes you need a character to help define the other characters. That's what Emmy is here. Emmy is there to define Summer and her complicated life at this point, right? But again, she's also a red herring as far as the whodunit prospect because of the first letter E, which we're going to talk about Ethan in a second there. But I like the fact that when they actually save Emmy from being killed, thereby changing the future and changing the timeline, there's that moment where they're just kind of standing at the front steps of Emmy's house. And I'm like, this is the proper way to reveal this. And then all of a sudden, everything else slots into place. I think it was done at a really good level. And like even the kiss between them at the party before they're about to take down the killer, that makes sense too, because this is Summer saying like, I should have. You were right. I'm sorry I didn't. And I'm going to make sure that you know how I feel before anything bad could possibly happen. Because Emmy doesn't know what Summer's about to do. She's not in on the plan. So all of a sudden there's this, big reveal to Emmy of Summer's like, this is the commitment. This is now the turning point of like, no matter what happens, you need to know how I feel. And I liked that part about it.
I completely understand your point. I really do. I even thought it was Emmy, especially from the beginning when they got into that fight. And then the letter with the E, I was like, okay, maybe it's Emmy. But I can definitely see the progression from Summer of her wanting to be with her. And just because of society at that time, it just couldn't happen because she would be viewed very differently.
Yeah. But then we get to Samuel Braun, who played Ethan, who's yet another red herring in this. This is the guy that, clearly likes Summer, but he's also clearly an asshole. Your thoughts on Samuel Braun?
He was just a asshole to be an asshole.
Yeah. But here's the thing. We're not supposed to like Ethan. We're actually supposed to sit there and consider whether he's the killer or not. So Ethan needs to be that guy. He needs to be that who's there whenever there's the possibility of someone about to get killed. His very presence in the mall before Val and Brina get killed is literally, it's like he may as well be holding up a red flag saying, hi, you're going to start to think it's me. But the thing is, when we're not supposed to like the character and we don't like the character, that means the actor did the job well. Samuel Braun brought us a character that we legitimately thought was a killer. And that's good acting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that was actually, I don't know if that was actually his only scene that he does something like a red herring, because I think the last time we see him again was the party.
No. Aside from being at the mall, because remember, there was the point where Summer finds the note from E in her locker at the rowing club, and he's there as well. Yes. Both Emmy and Ethan are at the rowing club. She's not quite sure who it's from.
You're right. So
I think she knows it's Emmy because of the handwriting, which would make sense. But still, we don't know that at that point. And yeah. Ethan's there.
Because even she thought, oh, who the heck wrote this? But then she saw it a second time and was like, wow, okay, I know who it is, but we don't. The audience don't, because we think it's Ethan with how he was acting.
Right. And Lucy thinks it's Ethan because he doesn't know it, or she doesn't know Emmy. She does not know at all about Emmy, except for the fact that she was one of the girls who was killed. She never knew that her and Summer were an item. She didn't know that Summer couldn't tell her parents about her and Emmy. So we're going at this from Lucy's knowledge standpoint, which allows us to still think that it's Ethan.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And it's like, I will say it was nice to see two contrasting views and seeing, okay, those are two big red flags, but they weren't the ones.
Yeah, no.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Streaming now on Peacock. Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie are back
That's hot. Loves it.
for a show-stopping reunion that will prove putting on an opera is anything but simple.
We're really good at this.
One thing's for sure, they won't be upstaged.
Good to have you back. Come on, we've got a show to do.
Paris and Nicole, The Encore, a 3-part reunion special. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
I'm going to ask you a question about this next actor, this next character here. Jordan Peele, who played Mr. Fleming, the science teacher. So clearly, he's a little left of center. He's a little out there, he's a little kooky. But he was also at the mall when we knew there was going to be a killer there. So at any point while you were watching this, did you for a second consider that Mr. Fleming might be the killer?
I'm gonna be honest, I actually did think so. Mostly on the fact of I watch a whole lot of mystery shows, especially one on Hulu called Only Murders in the Building.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely need to go watch it. This is definitely I'm promoting it. People need to go watch that show. It's very good with Selena Gomez.
What, a show about podcasters? That never happens.
But in that show, the person that like is not shown so much is the killer. So I definitely did think it could have been him, but he was just one of those teachers that you can have that budding relationship with. Like you could even see from Lucy herself, she had a budding relationship with the teacher. Yeah. And not even a budding, like she had a more intimate like relationship with him because he helped her get through, like is helping her get through the grief that she's dealing with.
Yeah, not intimate like a Miller's Girl kind of intimate but kind of thing, but very much one of those things where it's like this is his prized pupil. This is the one he's very, very proud of, and it became almost a personal mission to for him to see her get this NASA internship. Like he's literally the only one rooting for her to get this opportunity. But if we're taking a look at, and I hate to use this as reference, but I'm going to use this as a reference anyways, because it is kind of in the whodunit realm. You think about every episode of Scooby-Doo, because every episode of Scooby-Doo is a whodunit, and more often than not, we meet the person in the monster mask early on in the show, so we should already know who it is. We meet Mr. Fleming early on in this film. So there is that possibility that, hey, maybe, just maybe, we're playing by Scooby-Doo rules here, and maybe he is the guy. Because they kind of play him a little, I hate to use this reference, but kind of Disney Channel-esque kind of caricature of a science teacher. It's just one of those things where it's like, you are really, really, really over the top as far as your look goes. Not necessarily his acting, but how they really kind of scruff him up with the long hair and the beard, and a little odd, kind of maybe has some serial killer vibes. Clearly he was meant to be a red herring, because otherwise why would he be at the mall at that point in time?
Yeah, I completely agree. But it just didn't sit right to me that a person that is helping someone with grief and trying to get through it to kill someone. And you could even see that even with Summer, she had some sort of like, I wouldn't say like that close like relationship with Mr. Fleming, but she still was trying her best to be like close and to still get good grades.
But remember too, when we meet Mr. Fleming in 2003, I mean, we already know he exists because he was Lucy's teacher in 2024. So when we meet him again in 2003, Quinn is there in the science room as well. So clearly, Mr. Fleming is one of those teachers that really goes above and beyond for the students, that he sits there and feels that they have the ability to go on and become bigger than they are. But keep in mind too, right? And again, here we go. Quinn gets rejected by Summer because he never really kind of got the chance to give her the note. He never really got a chance to confess how he feels towards Summer. So was Mr. Fleming acting then out of, I don't want to say spite, but like to avenge his prize pupil? That's why you sit there and go, maybe Mr. Fleming is the guy, and he's maybe taken too keen an interest in his students' success and well-being to the point of anything that brings them down, he's going to set it right. Again, it ain't him, but that's okay, because sometimes you want a character to sit there and go, maybe it is him. You never know.
But you can also see it on the perspective of Lucy was there and she helped Quinn try to get through that.
Yeah.
And in the end also, like in the end, you could see, okay, she got him through that and he had to just overcome that and say, okay, I have to put aside this loving relationship I have, and look at the bigger picture.
But remember too, in 2003, like before the time traveling happens, he never got to give her the note. But remember, Emmy was killed before Summer was. So Summer never really got to reveal how she felt about Emmy. So Quinn doesn't know that Summer loves Emmy. So it's one of those things where had he known that, he could sit there and say, okay, well, it's not me. It's because she's not into, well, me, she's into Emmy, and that's okay, right? He never got to have that realization, so he never got to put two and two together. Again, future timelines, the whole thing. But that's just one of those things where when you're playing the big game of like whodunit chess, sometimes you need to put a pawn or two out there as a feint. And that's a good thing about this film. Two more people to talk about. We're going to talk about them at the same time here. Sydney Sabiston and Katim O'Connor, who played Val and Brina. So these are the first two victims. They are Summer's friends. They are together, and they are expendable. Your thoughts on them?
Their kills were definitely like gruesome. It was definitely something to watch. But I will say, like Val, when we had the when they were at the thrift shop to get the clothes, she did act like a little bit of a diva.
I mean, again, these are caricatures, right? Katim O'Connor's death was, I mean, first of all, he gets killed by a broken copy of American Psycho on DVD, which again, he rented American Psycho. So clearly they're sitting there going, well, maybe it's him kind of thing. No, it's not. He's dead. But Sydney Sabiston's death in this, like, again, they don't show much of it. It's all in off-camera implication. So, dear listeners, if you are younger, remember this film is rated TV-14. So it's okay. This isn't gory. This isn't gruesome. The thought process, the imagination is making much more of a picture out of this than what's actually on the screen. Again, I like that. You don't need a gory film about a serial killer. You can do things in implication, and sometimes that's better.
Yeah, I agree. And especially with when the serial killer was going for Emmy, it was like there wasn't going to be a very gruesome death. Like you just weren't going to see that.
Yeah.
With Val, it's like, okay, we knew, like we saw what was going to happen. It's just we don't need to see that.
No.
Because there's so much of a bigger story to it than having to see a gruesome death.
Yeah. I want to give credit where credit's due. And Hannah McPherson, the director of this, and she also co-wrote the script, handled this really admirably in a way that allows the imagination to do the work for you. Like when I say death by escalator, you have to see the scene, but you're not going to see the scene, but you're definitely going to think about it. And again, that's something that directors don't necessarily do a lot of. They kind of overdo it because they have to feel like they have to over visualize everything. Here, it's done in inference and suggestion. And I think, I don't know, maybe that's just me being old and curmudgeonly, but it's one of those things where I don't mind if you don't spoon feed me the visuals.
It's like show, not tell.
Exactly. We talked about this a little bit earlier in that this film came out and got pushed back because of the release of Totally Killer. Obviously, this is going to have some impact on the critic scores and some impact on the reception on this. But I think you also have to remember that you can have two films that come out around the same time that are basically the same story. Deep Impact and Armageddon came out in the same year, months apart. Dante's Peak and Volcano both came out in the same year, just months apart. Sometimes great minds think alike. That's okay. You can like both. You don't necessarily have to have one or the other. And again, not having seen Totally Killer and not being able to comment on it directly and not being able to talk about it on the show because, again, with an 87% score or whatever it's got, it's too good for this podcast. But the thing is, I don't think that makes Time Cut less. Does it look a little bit more budgeted in its lighting and scene setting and whatnot? Yeah, okay, but you work with the budget that you get. But just because you have a small budget doesn't necessarily mean that you have a small film. Time Cut is definitely worth your time on Netflix. So if you're looking for something that's, well, again, we've already spoiled it, but still, regardless of, go watch it anyways, because there are good things in there and there are good performances in this film. Alex, before we go, it is time. Who is your MVP of Time Cut?
For me, it just has to be Lucy.
Madison Bailey.
Like, you could just see the progression from her character and how she dealt with that trauma itself in the movie, and how she understood that she needs to be in a place that she feels like herself.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I feel bad for Madison Bailey being in two films that qualifies for this podcast in the same year. Speaking of this film, she is my MVP. She does give a really powerful performance. You will have to listen to our Grading on a Curve special to hear what I think about The Painter, which, for the record, The Painter has a tomatometer of 0%. Grading on a Curve, end of the year. Anyways, that's my little promo for this. But I also want to give props to Rachel Crawford, who played Lucy/Summer's mother. I think the emptiness and the trauma that she showed in 2024, balanced with the much sunnier personality in 2003. You had two very realistic, very strong performances out of Rachel Crawford. It is really a toss-up for me between Madison Bailey, who carries the film all the way through on her shoulders, her very capable shoulders, and Rachel Crawford, who gave a very strong performance that not only added character to Lucy, but also added character to Summer as well. So you had very good performances in this film. Alex, thank you so much for this. Now, please remind our listeners where they can find you out there on the interwebs.
Thank you. So yeah, you can find me at a.leal2026 on Insta and by email from leala5252@gmail.com. And I'm definitely going to be recommending you more movies.
Oh, don't worry. 2025 right around the corner. We'll have you back on for sure. And to you, dear listeners, even though 2025 is right around the corner, you have a job to do right now. Because you need to follow us on social media at Not That Badcast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. That's what the deal is. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to the page so you get updated whenever we put up new blog posts and whenever we put up new episodes for you to listen to. And remember, 2025, we are launching our merch line, so make sure if you want to support the show, maybe buy a shirt. Until next time, he's Alex, I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.